All right, everyone. This is going to be a challenge. This is a really, really exciting topic. I'm super passionate about it. It is always a challenge to fit presentations and demos into a given amount of time, but we're going to do our best. Full disclosure, this is normally a 1 hour presentation that I have given, but I'm making room for not one, but two separate sim demos as part of the presentation. So. If I talk quickly, I apologize. I will try my best to meter my speech, and I will keep the presentation as short as I possibly can. Some of the slides may be a little bit of an eye chart. Feel free to go back and view them. Just know that I won't be going into a tremendous amount of depth on some of the slides just because of time.
And then, Keith, before you get started with your presentation, would you like to do our poll questions?
I actually have a slot for those,
All
if
right,
that's okay. I've inserted
that's
them into the,
absolutely
yep,
fine.
no problem. All right, fantastic. So a very quick introduction. My name is Keith Smith. I'm the founder of Pilot Edge. I have been simming since the age of 7, and I am about to turn 51 in about 2 weeks. So I've been simming for a very long time, longer than I've been flying full-size aircraft. And I loved it so much that I started a company focused on simulation and the integration of air traffic control, which I'm also very passionate about as well. So I'm one of those people who started off simming and transitioned into full-scale flying, which was rare 20 years ago, but is actually becoming more and more common today as simulation has gotten better and better. So I'll keep my bio very, very short, and let's talk about what we're going to cover here today. So we are going to work through, apologize, I'm dismissing a couple of windows. We are going to talk through very quickly the general benefits of simulation. Some will be obvious, some will be less obvious. Keep that relatively short. Talk about what some of the perceived pitfalls of simulation are versus what I think the actual pitfalls of simulation are. Move on to best practices, which is really where the meat of the presentation will be. And then we'll do two separate demonstrations of the simulator. One is the traditional use of the sim, types of operations you would expect with normal use of simulation, modern day simulation, and then a quick demo of an online flight integrating live air traffic control services. There's a couple of different services out there. I'll be demoing the Pilot Edge service. And so you'll be able to see the contrast and the experience when flying a simulator in the more traditional way versus flying it in a live environment such as Pilot Edge. Okay, so I'm guessing if you're here, you're already interested in simulation, and you're likely a real-world pilot, so student pilot or instrument-rated pilot or a private pilot. The two specific audiences I'm interested in reaching are you considering the use of a home simulator, or do you already have a simulator at home but aren't sure how best to use it? There's a staggering number of people who fall into category number 2. So people have purchased sims, they've purchased equipment, and then they are stuck with the now what do I do situation. Okay, so if either of those apply to you, you're in the right place. Okay, so let's jump in very quickly into the benefits of simulation. These are the obvious ones. You get to explore limitations in a low-risk environment. Less
Keith?
formally, yes, Laura.
Yeah, we're not seeing slides if you have slides that you want to show right now.
Awesome. It would be helpful to share the presentation, would it not?
Yeah, sometimes it helps, and I'm glad I'm not the only one who's forgotten to do the share thing.
It's
So
more of a guideline than a rule, but are you seeing them now?
that's perfect. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Laura. There was the agenda that we just talked about. There's the target audience, which is you. And here we go. So you didn't miss too much. Thank you, Laura. I really appreciate that. So obvious benefits of simulation. You get to not die when you make a mistake in your simulator at home. May die of embarrassment or being humbled, but you are not going to bend metal. So that is the traditional use of simulation or traditional benefits. You don't get hurt. There are opportunities to explore more extreme situations with regards to exposure to weather, exposure to performance limited situations, so high density altitude or being over gross weight or the aircraft being out of CG. There's all sorts of things you can experiment with in the simulation environment that would not be safe to practice in the real world. It's also incredibly cost efficient. Don't need to lecture people on how much it costs to run an airplane. If you've rented one or you own one, you know they're not cheap. They burn dinosaur juice and cost money. Whereas your sim, other than the initial acquisition cost, basically just runs on electrons. So there's huge cost efficiency. Neither of these categories are likely to be new to you. They're quite obvious. The less obvious the less obvious benefits. This has really become true for me. The time efficiency in terms of door to door. I have access to an airplane, very lucky to have access to an airplane, about 4 minutes from my house. That's how close I live to my local airport. I still cannot get to the airplane to stay proficient due to work issues, family issues, things like that. And I live that close to the airport. Most people do not. When I do have a block of time, say 1 hour, I have tried really hard to make that work where I go to the airplane, I pre-flight, I've done my briefing ahead of time. There is not much you can get done in 1 hour of a 1 hour block of time. The same is not true for a simulator. I find during a 1 hour block of time, I can do about 55 minutes of training, and that's been pretty consistent. I usually brief while the sim is firing up, and then I'm off to the races. Additionally, the time of day and the weather are not limiting factors. So if it's a winter evening, you can fly as though it was a nice summer morning. So those are some of the less obvious benefits of using the sim. This one I'm extremely passionate about is mastery of skills over time. There's a lot of fixation on first solo, getting your private, getting your instrument, getting your commercial. The day you are awarded that ticket does not mean you know everything there is to know about flying an airplane. We're always learning. So if you look at the difference in skill between an ATP and a student pilot, there's thousands of hours of experience there. How do you acquire thousands of hours of experience? Well, without a simulator, you're going to spend many thousands of dollars until you reach a point where you get paid to fly. But prior to that, it's all coming out of your own pocket, which means it's not really realistic to acquire absolute masses of experience in the airplane. You usually acquire just enough to get by, and you hope to acquire more. But the sim can really be a godsend for being able to acquire just mountains of experience. As long as you have the time, you can achieve mastery of a lot of the things that I'm listing here that would be financially unrealistic to be able to obtain in real life. So I'm not going to go through them all there, but there's quite the list, both on the private side and on the instrument side. Okay, so fantastic. Hopefully I've convinced you that you should be simulating if you're not already. So we can talk through the perceived pitfalls, actual pitfalls, and then best practices. And I believe, you know what, Laura, let's go ahead and roll the first poll question. I'm not sure when I had it coming up. I thought it was going to be sooner than this. So if you can, Laura, step in and go for it.
All right, I just launched our first poll question. For those of you guys and gals who are using a simulator at home, do you fly exclusively VFR, exclusively IFR, or do you mix it up and do both? And so with that, I will end our poll in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And here's our result. 25% of us are exclusively VFR, 19% exclusively IFR, and 56% of us mix it up and fly both VFR and IFR.
That is incredible. That is fantastic. Things have definitely changed over the years. That's wonderful. So historically, it has been almost exclusively IFR because of limitations in visual systems in simulators and the fidelity of the airport environments. There was a perception that you could only do IFR. So appreciate that, Laura. That was actually really informative. Okay, let's talk through the perceived pitfalls, the actual pitfalls. I'm sorry, we covered those. And so let's go through no, hang on a second. Managed to lose myself. Yes, we covered the benefits. We're going to talk about, yes, the perceived pitfalls of using a sim, actual pitfalls, and then move into best practices. Okay, so we've actually dispelled some of the first one already, which I'll be very happy to remove from my list. There's a perception that sims are only good for IFR. Historically, that may have been the case 20 plus years ago, but it's no longer the case. Uh, Only useful for emergencies and possibly cockpit familiarization. There's actually way more you can do in the sim in terms of normal ops practice. So actually conducting flights and tricking your brain into thinking you're flying an airplane um, is certainly more than just practicing emergencies. There's the common perception that this sim doesn't fly like my airplane. You're right, it doesn't. This $66 joystick is not the same as the flight controls in a Cessna 172, a Cirrus, or a Baron. There's aerodynamic forces taking that are acting on your flight controls in the airplane that are really hard to simulate in a home sim. The good news is it doesn't matter nearly as much as people think. Case in point, when you go to rent a car from Hertz or Avis on vacation, the gas and brake and steering do not respond in exactly the same way as your vehicle that you drive at home. And yet your brain adapts within about 5 to 10 seconds. So why we have this fixation that the controls don't feel like your airplane, I'm not entirely sure, because we are smarter than that as a species and we can adapt. So left is still left, right is right, up is up, and down is down. You just have to adjust your inputs um, based on what you're seeing on the screen. There's a pitfall, the perceived pitfall, that you shouldn't bother taxiing or landing. Just don't worry about that stuff. The sim doesn't fly realistically. Just get to the flying. There's a tremendous amount you can practice in the sim with regards to airport operations, taxiing, slips, slips to landing, crosswind landings, slow flight. There's a lot that sims can do, especially in this day and age. This is a big one, teaching bad habits. Of all the perceived pitfalls, this is probably, that does have some truth to it. It can reinforce bad habits. On the primary side, if there are any CFIs or double Is here, you'll know that students often suffer from instrument fixation as a result of using their sims during primary training. The good news is you can fix that in the cockpit in about 2 minutes by covering up all the gauges. That's what my instructor did to me, and it worked fine. As long as you as a student are aware that you may be picking up some bad habits in the sim and be open to the fact that you may have to be re-educated about a couple of things or verify some things with an instructor or in the airplane, the pros of using the sim generally outweigh the cons. Okay, so what are the actual pitfalls of home sims? It's a huge mistake to constantly chase the perfect replication of your panel. So many people I talk to who are interested in getting into simulation get tripped up on the fact that, the sim doesn't have my plane, it doesn't have my panel. I've been simming for 20 plus years in an environment that doesn't have the plane that I'm flying, and it's absolutely fine. So a caveat to that would be if you're specifically trying to learn the systems of an airplane or how to use a specific autopilot or specific GPS, then yes, you do need some fidelity for that. But outside of those particular tasks, there's a mountain of things you can do in the simulator that do not require the sim to exactly match the airplane that you're flying. It's a pitfall to fail to treat the sim like an airplane when it comes to decision making. I will see people do things in a sim that make no sense at all because they had the mindset that it was just a sim. And so they can come in 30 knots too fast and just force it into the ground and bounce a bunch of times or get into a PIO. And I'm like, well, that was an odd decision. Do you get into PIOs often when you land your plane? Oh, no, I would have gone around in my plane. Okay, how come you didn't go around in the sim? So it's a missed opportunity to, if you're using a sim and not treating it from a decision-making standpoint, like the airplane. Failing to review or debrief your flight. Most of the training value I get from using the sim is in thinking about what I learned from that flight, as opposed to necessarily what happened at the time. So just like you review a real-world flight, you should also be debriefing your sim flights. And this last one is a big one. Stop flying at your home airport. It's not as exciting as you think it is. Plus, you already know your home airport like the back of your hand. You know your home airspace like the back of your hand. You know all the frequencies. You know the controller's voices. You know the frequency change before it even comes in a lot of cases. Spread your wings. Go fly elsewhere. It's all good. Again, it's one of the benefits of the sim is being able to explore the world in a way that you couldn't with a real airplane. Okie dokie. I am going to need to speed up. So some best practices for so scheduling is an important one. Life will get in the way. If you do not schedule your sim time as a working professional adult, it's likely that it will gather dust. I know mine has. So just like you schedule flights in the airplane, you should schedule flights in your sim at home. There's two mindsets when you are using a sim. Are you doing skills practice or are you doing end-to-end flights? Both of these things are super valuable. You should know which one you're doing at any given point. So some example of skills practice would be very narrowly scoped tasks. So let's do some short takeoffs, softs. So shorts and softs, takeoffs and landings, crosswind, practice, power off 180s, etc. Those are individual skills versus end-to-end flights. So end-to-end flights are exactly what the name suggests. You're in the mindset that you are going from A to B and you conduct the flight usually from cold and dark. So during skills practice, it's going to be interrupted. You might use custom weather. You could be pausing. You could be doing replays. You could be loading from a previously saved situation, which is something we're going to demo. Whereas for an end-to-end flight, you would strongly consider using real-world weather for a much more dynamic experience, both in terms of visibilities, ceilings, temperatures, winds aloft, all of those things that make a flight feel real. Those would be great times to incorporate that when you're practicing end-to-end flights. Both of these have value. I'm not saying you should do one versus the other. I'm just saying that you should have a mindset of which one you're doing at any given time. Virtual reality, just don't do it. It's not really ready yet, except for particular use cases, which I listed at the top there, but you will quickly become frustrated for the most part. Unless you're a tech wizard and very passionate about it, you'll quickly run into limitations. And guess what? For instrument flying, you're looking at a hood, looking at the instrument panel most of the time anyway, so you really don't need a VR headset to do that. Let's see. This best practice is an important one. If you're a student pilot or a private pilot, do you use the sim to practice what you've been doing in real life, or do you use the sim to practice what's coming up? There are debates. There's tremendous training value in training ahead if you're fairly diligent about self-study. There is, of course, the risk of picking up some potential bad habits. Just know that going in. That certainly was the case for me with my instrument training. I pre-studied for my instrument before formally starting, had one or two corrections, literally one or two corrections, and that was it. But otherwise, the benefits greatly outweighed the cons. But it's not for everybody. Perhaps you just want to use the sim to stick with what you've been already taught and have practiced in the airplane, and now you're going to use the sim to reinforce that. Those are both completely valid. Again, just have a viewpoint on which of those two you're going to do. All right, I think this is the final best practice. It's good to think about your sim as a series of layers. When you first acquire a sim, do not swing for the fences. Do not go for the most complex panel, the most complex airplanes, the most gadgets and devices. Think of it as a foundation or a series of layers. So the basic layer is the sim itself and some basic hardware, generally choosing between X-Plane and Microsoft Flight Simulator. I do not have time to go into those today. It'd be an excellent conversation for another time. Then you can add electronic flight bag integration. So I have with me my handy dandy iPad. It works out of the box with X-Plane. And so that would be another layer to add on top is the use of the sim with the EFB. And then finally, for the top level of integration or the most complex level, it would be adding a live air traffic control service. You would not want to buy a simulator and on the second day of use or the first day of use, jump onto an online network where the stakes are much higher and there's a lot of pressure. So you need to build up these foundations and then add the next layer when it's appropriate. Okay, for primary training, pattern work is tricky but not impossible. We're actually going to do a demo of that. You can practice the four forces, understanding the four forces. Generally better to have started in the airplane first and then reinforce in the sim. The stick and the yoke don't feel like the real airplane. You have to have the mindset of, I'm going to fly it the way an autopilot does, which is to assume nothing in terms of absolute inputs on the controls, but instead apply very small inputs and then see how the airplane reacts. Again, same way you would drive a rental car that you have never driven before, you kind of experiment with the controls to see how they feel. That's how you should be approaching simulation as well. All of these operations are great for primary, so you can do pilotage with modern day scenery, cross countries, some emergency procedures, all sorts of landings, crosswind landings. You can absolutely practice with ATC. That's a huge part of primary training is radio fright and lack of airspace awareness. It's very poorly taught in most primary training curriculums. So there's an opportunity to practice that in the sim. However, being realistic, things like steep turns and maybe even stalls are almost a total bust in the sim because there are real world forces you need to be feeling that are simply not going to be present in your home sim. So the good news is there's a ton you can do on the VFR side, but just know that there are just a couple of limitations. Okay, we are getting there. Actually, we're doing very, very well at this point. On the instrument side, you are going to need ATC to achieve full fidelity of the environment. So think about when you go to do an IFR flight, you are by definition going to be interacting with ATC before your wheels even leave the ground. You have got to pick up a clearance and things like that. So it's really not optional to have ATC when you're doing instrument training in your sim at home if you're looking to get full exposure to what it means to fly IFR. What you can do offline is basic attitude instrument flying, and you can practice shooting approaches, but not in the most realistic way when it comes to approaches, other than just the final approach segment and maybe the mist. Otherwise, the setup for the approach, coordinating the approach, you really do need ATC for that to happen. Of course, in the IFR system, you have to deal with route changes, how to handle system failures, and all the unexpected parts of IFR flying. And those are the things which tend to trip people up in my experience. They can shoot approaches in isolation in a sim very well. They can keep the needle centered very well. Yet they have very little confidence in flying in the system because guess what? They barely picked up any actual clearances and barely filed during their instrument training. So there is a gap between what they've been doing in the sim versus the real airplane. And so there are ways to close that gap through the addition of things like an ATC service. Okay, we are doing a pretty good job on time. Good job, everyone. Some closing thoughts. I didn't have time to delve into the importance of experience levels when it comes to, say, a student versus an ATP. It is a really important point. There is no substitute for time in a seat using your pilot brain. That is how you build experience. I strongly believe that the sim is a great proxy for the real world if you are using your sim correctly. If you are doing loops and rolls under the San Francisco Golden Gate Bridge, it's actually pretty good aerobatics practice. But other than that, it probably is not building up very good real world experience. So if you sim like you fly, then your simming should have nearly one-to-one value in terms of the level of experience that it's providing to you. And I know that's a really, really big claim, but I know it to be true. So I am barely flying a real world airplane at this point, and I would feel so uncomfortable going to fly it if not for the fact that I have a sim at home. I really do get rusty to the point where it is just a little slow for me to reach for like the avionics master because I haven't reached for the avionics master in my physical airplane in a while. So it takes me half a second to find it. But the stick and rudder skills have not atrophied because I've been using the sim at home. My radio comms have not atrophied because I've been using the sim at home. My landing skills are fine, and judging the glide slope and fine throttle adjustments do not atrophy in the slightest because of a high fidelity, well-configured sim at home. So I wanted to spend some time on that because I think it's one of the most important parts of this whole thing is to realize that a well-configured sim can be a very, very good proxy for the airplane. Let's see. So treat the sim again as a series of layers. If you're just getting into it, start simple and work your way up over time. There is no rush. Make sure you're enjoying it, and that will help you get the most use out of the sim. We do offer, I've been mentioning ATC interaction, and I'm sure that it's not obvious what that means, but there are services out there which provide air traffic control interaction. Using human beings or using artificial intelligence. Some of those networks are free and some of them are subscription based. My company is Pilot Edge, and we provide that ATC interaction on a scheduled basis for a subscription fee. So there is going to be a demonstration of that as part of this. So you'll get an idea for what that's all about. But I would strongly encourage you to look into some sort of ATC interaction to augment your simulator experience and really increase the fidelity of the environment. So the URL is there. That is what we provide, and we will dive into that a little bit more during the demo. Laura, if you want to run the second poll, that would be helpful as well, and then we'll jump into the first demo.
All right, I'm going to launch our next poll question. What is your current level of experience in engaging with desktop simulation? Don't have one and not actively researching the topic. Interested but overwhelmed by hardware, software, and ops considerations. Tried it but gave up or didn't find it useful. Or I have one and I'm still trying to learn how to use it. And those are our choices. I will end this poll in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And here's our results. 14% of us do not have one and are not actively researching the topic. 30% are interested but overwhelmed. 6% tried it but gave it up or didn't find it useful. And 26% of us have one and are still trying to learn how to use it.
Got it. And the 24% have one and are actively using it. I saw that one at the end too.
Oh, yes. I'm sorry. Yes, have one and actively using it, 24%. Sorry.
Awesome. Okay. That seems about right. That's yeah, I appreciate everyone answering that. Yeah, I know it seemed like a lot of options, but as you can see, a lot of them were valid. So it really does run the gamut. So this is a real problem that people are acquiring simulators, and there's a lot there. Okay, let us jump into what is going to be the first demo. I'll make it quite quick, and then we'll get into the second demo, and then there will be Q&A at the end. So Laura, I'm going to swap over to sharing the sim, hopefully, and let's see how that goes.
Well, it went great when we practiced, so.
It sure did. It was one of my favorite parts. Okay, so I'm going to share sound. It'll be stereo, and 3, 2, 1, kapow.
Oh, that's pretty.
It is pretty, isn't it?
Yeah, it's pretty.
We were talking about that during the demo. Yeah, sims don't have to be boring. They have come a long way. They can be pretty and useful. Okay, so we are in X-Plane 12, and I will try not to rush this part. It's going to be an important thing to do, is getting comfortable with the sim. So I'll try and take my time and get through some of the most important points. So I am in X-Plane 12. I'm sitting on a runway. This is a very typical way to start using a sim, right? Who needs to taxi? Who needs to start the engines? This is a valid way and the traditional way of using sims, which is to hit the gas and go, which is why that lack of preparation often translates into loops and rolls under the Golden Gate Bridge. But there is still value here. So let's take a look at some basic things in a simulator, basic capabilities of any simulator, and they fall into categories of selecting the aircraft, selecting an airport, and dealing with the weather and time of day. So let's take a look at airports, for example. So you can usually, this is going to vary from Microsoft Flight Sim to X-Plane, but you can normally type in the code for an airport. So San Luis Obispo, I'm in Lincoln Park, New Jersey, so I type in November 07, and sure enough, I see Lincoln Park in the list there. It actually shows what the weather is there at the moment, VFR scattered, which looking out the window is about right. You can type in the name of the airport as well, or a partial name. So that's Lincoln. Well, there's a bunch with Lincolns, Lincoln, Nebraska, things like that. Lincoln Park should be there as well. Okay, once I've decided which airport I like, I can hit the customize button and see a visual depiction of the airport and all the places I could start. I could click on runway 19. I could click on runway 1. I can click on one of the ramp spots, and then I could swap to, I could basically position the airplane at that airport. So that is the general way that you position the airplane at an airport, not just selecting the airport, but where on the airport you want to start. Do you want to start on a runway? If so, which runway? Or do you want to start on a ramp? If so, which ramp? If you do start on a ramp, it becomes very important later on to know which ramp you're on when you're dealing with an online flight where you're interacting with ATC. If you can't articulate where you are on the airport, they're going to struggle to give you a taxi instruction. So there's a whole different level of awareness you have to have when we get to the online flying. But in any case, that's how you place the aircraft wherever you'd like it to be. We're at the San Luis Obispo Airport in the north end of Southern California, halfway between San Francisco and LA. And give you an idea. There we go. There's the map. So San Luis Obispo is over here, LA would be down here to the southeast, and San Francisco would be up to the north. Most sims have this kind of capability with an online map that you can zoom in, get some good awareness as to where you are. You can see the two runways. That's runway 29, that's runway 25. We are sitting on runway 29, and there's taxiway Alpha, and you can zoom in quite a lot. You can see the taxiways, you can see the individual ramp, parking spots, etc. So the map is awesome for that. You can swap to a low en route chart and see airways, VORs, localizers, etc. So the map view is excellent. You can pick up the plane and drag it in this view as well. So if you are wanting to speed things along as you want to shorten the en route segment of your flight, so let's say you've joined an airway, you need to fast forward 30 miles, pick up the plane and drag it 30 miles, and life is good. Okay, so that covers the map. Let's take a look at things like the weather. So weather is a critical part of using a sim. The simulator is, most simulators are capable of using real-world weather or setting hard-coded weather, also known as manual weather or custom weather. Those terms can be used interchangeably. I have my sim set up right now to download real-world weather. So we have visibility 7 1/3. There's no precip, it's 55 Fahrenheit, and the altimeter settings 29901. I suspect if you were to look at San Luis Obispo Airport right now in real world, it would look quite a lot like that weather-wise. Not only do we have the surface winds, we also have the winds aloft, which is a critical part of real-world flying and can be a critical part of cross-country flying in a sim. So having those winds aloft based on real world is huge. It affects your sim experience, and if it affects performance, it also allows you to better prepare for your flight or practice cross countries by briefing using, say, ForeFlight or Garmin Pilot on an iPad, and then having that experience in the sim where there's correlation between the two. So I think real world weather is undervalued as a capability in simulators, and we should be using it more. That's all very, very well and good, but what if the weather is perfect and you need it to be something different? My favorite thing to do is to not throw the baby out with the bathwater. If I swap to manual weather, which I'll do right now, bam, I just swapped to manual weather. Notice it didn't destroy all of my winds aloft, right? So X-Plane lets you swap to manual weather, but the starting point for that manual weather was the real world weather we just loaded. So all the winds aloft are still there. I can now add precip or bring the visibility up or down. I can change the altimeter setting. I could bring the temperature up to 45C or 30C if we're at a high density airport, a high altitude airport. You could then practice performance limited takeoffs. We can add a cloud layer. So I just added some cumulus clouds. I can pick how what I want the bases and tops to be. It's depicted there visually. I can choose between the cloud types, cirrus, stratus, cumulus. I can pick the coverage amount, few, scattered, broken, overcast. I can specifically type in the tops and the bases if I like. So you can enter it with your fingers or you can do it visually. Winds can also be set by, actually, where do you set the winds? Oh, yeah, you pick the wind, you click on the wind layer, and then I can adjust the level of turbulence, the gusts, wind shear, and the specific direction of each wind layer. So there's huge capabilities around weather in the sim. Okay, I'm gonna make this, gonna have to make this quick. Real quick look at the failure screen, and then we'll fly this puppy. Go to customize, I go to failures. It looks simple, it's not. There's a lot there. So looking at instruments by navigation, there are all the navigation instruments that I can play with. Here are my primary instruments, the pilot side airspeed indicator, the pilot altimeter, etc. I can toggle those to fail now. I can fail them when a key is pressed. I can fail at an altitude. I can fail at a speed. I can set a mean time between failure. I can set an exact time until failure, etc. A whole presentation could be given on failure management. Big part of the sim. You need a sim that allows you to play with failures. Okay, let us move into quick views. This had Laura and Troy oohing and ahhing earlier today. So being able to look around in the sim is key and is a traditional limitation of sims. People are used to using the mouse, so I'm now using my right mouse button and dragging the view around. I happen to think this is the worst possible way to manipulate the view in the sim. It's just really uncomfortable and unreliable and disorienting and not very smooth. However, X-Plane allows you to pre-program different views. These are called quick look views. You can look them up on YouTube. I have them pre-programmed for my Baron. This is me looking forward. That's the left wing. That's the right wing. Excellent for pattern work. There's the right 45, left 45, rear 45 on the left, rear 45 on the right. Notice how smooth and beautiful that panning is. And there's my instrument flying view. And if I wanted to change it, there are keyboard shortcuts to move the camera around and spin the camera around. So if I wanted to save a view here, I can do that. I have just saved the view. I'll go back to my forward, left, right, and there's my saved view of the panel that I just created 5 seconds ago. So view management is absolutely critical, both for VFR and IFR flying in the sim. Get that right and get really comfortable with it for the plane you're flying, and it'll save you. For all the people who said they were frustrated using their sim, I bet that will fix maybe 30% of the issues right there, if I had to guess. Okay, let's jump into the pattern and fly this thing. We are just going to gas and go. I know the field elevation here is around 200 feet, so let me set my altimeter.
San Luis County Regional Information, Charlie, current.
Can ignore that ATIS right there. I'm not worrying about my radios. I'm not worrying about flows. I'm hitting the gas and going, which is what people do in sims all the time. I am casting my eyes down to the engine instruments real quick. Everything does appear to be in the green. My airspeed is alive. And we are taking off into this beautiful sunset on runway 29er. And of course, I left in such a rush, I didn't bug my HSI to the heading indicator. So I will fix that on the upwind. I'm casting my eyes down so you can see the trim wheel. And of course, my trim wheel is not moving right now. That's a little surprising. Well, that's never happened before. Let me see if the trim is working. I think I may have failed my trim. Well, that has not happened in 30 years of flying a sim. So I think at some point while I was clicking on those menus, I may have somehow failed my trim. I'm actually going to take a quick look because that's going to make things difficult. So it's a good example of how you can change the settings in the sim. So I'm going to look at my joystick settings. I'm going to move the trim up and down, and it does say pitch trim up and down. as I'm pushing the buttons. So that should be working. Let me reset all failures in the aircraft and see if that's relevant. Don't see anything listed, but I'm clicking Fix All Systems, Apply Changes. Still have no trim. You have to love it. Okay. In any case, let's get a lap of the pattern done here. You can see the time of day is quite nice. We departed off of runway 29, so I guess we're heading towards sunset. I'm going to pull the power back. I'm going to get back down to pattern altitude, about 1,200 feet. One thing to pay attention to is the gauge fluidity. So I don't know how well it's sharing on Zoom exactly, but the gauges do move in a very fluid fashion, which is a really important part of operating the sim. If the gauges are moving in a really jerky way, it becomes a distraction. It just doesn't feel all that realistic. Side note, I'm holding gobs of forward pressure right now, so this is going to be quite interesting. I basically am treating it as though I have a failed trim. So what we have essentially is too much nose up trim right now, so I'm having to hold forward pressure here. All right, let's get this lap done. So I'm looking off the left wing just as I would in the real airplane. No problem getting that done. And let's make a short approach here because I'm running out of time in any case. So I'm going to go gear down, flaps down. I'm going to look down a little bit and let me pause the sim. I see 3 down in green and I see my flaps are down and indicating approach. I got my props full forward. I have my mixtures forward. So my GUMPS check is done. I'm not wearing my seatbelt is the only thing. And fuel is on the fullest tank because I have not moved the handle. So it's still on both actually. Okay, let's resume. And we're basically going to land on runway 29 right here. Just not tall for a little so you can enjoy the sights and sounds. Shoot for about 100 on file. Okay. My short approach had me very low there, and I realized we weren't going to make the threshold, so I goosed the power, as you can see. And there we go. That is 1 lap of the pattern. I'll stop it right here. Now, if we were to debrief all of that, the next thing we would want to do is go into replay mode. So I'd go to File, Toggle Replay Mode, and it's just like a VCR or a digital video recorder. I can drag the timeline back, see a replay. The more astute people will see that the lighting across the panel is dynamic based on where the sun is and where we're facing. That can have some actual training value with the sun blocking certain instruments or causing a glare. But now that I'm in replay mode, I have carte blanche to swap to external views and see what's going on. So there's our gear deployment. I can swap to any view we like. So I can as the replay is running, I still can change the views, which means I can focus on different things during the replay itself. Okay, I can also save the flight at any given point. So prior to this, I saved a scenario where I was on the midfield left downwind for runway 25. So if I press, I'll actually do it from here. If I go File, Load Flight, I can see all of my saved situations. So I have San Luis Obispo on left downwind for runway 25, saved an hour and 20 minutes ago. I have it bound to a key. So if I push Control-Alt-S, it would just load that. It will actually load that for me in the sim. So I'll do that. I should be able to do that now. Control-Alt-S. And it is magically loading the scenario. It won't take long to load the weather because we are already we're already at that airport. So you can see the gauge is kind of reset. And here I am on a midfield left downwind. There it is. I'll pause. I'm on a midfield left downwind for runway 25. So there's runway 25. There's my airplane. So the power of saved scenarios is that if you position the plane where you'd like it, you could then practice a specific task over and over and over in a repeatable way. And let's say I want to add a crosswind on the next one, or add a tailwind component, or change the weight, or change the temperature, or try it with a different failure. This is all traditional use of the simulator. Okay, I do wish we had more time. I apologize for being a little bit behind. I know I'm going quickly, but hopefully this has got some of the juices flowing in seeing traditional use of the sim. And again, this is all happening with a $65 or $70 joystick and a 20-year-old set of rudder pedals on a single screen. That's it. That's the extent of my hardware. Okay, I am going to swap over to the online flight, and then we will we'll get that part of it done. Laura, if while I'm setting this up, if you want to ask if you want to field any of the questions, I'm happy to answer them as I'm just getting repositioned here.
I will shoot you a couple of really quick ones. There's some that are going to take a little more discussion.
Okay.
Mary's wondering if there are any helicopter sims.
Yes, helicopters supported incredibly well, both in Microsoft Flight Simulator and in X-Plane. Absolutely.
And then Briscoe is wondering if Pilot Edge works with any and all sims, as in X-Plane, Microsoft Flight Sim, etc.
It does. Yes.
And then he's also wondering, what are the current airspace boundaries in Pilot Edge, and are there any plans to expand them?
We're always looking at expansion options. I can't announce anything here. We have about 90 towered airports and several thousand non-towered airports. Pick a point 200 miles east of Denver. We cover everything west of that. Select towered airports. So not every airport that's towered in real life in terms of class deltas will be staffed on Pilot Edge, but we list those in our operating hours section of the website. Hugely important question is my airspace covered? I'll just cut right to the chase. You don't need to fly in your home airspace for the training to be valuable. I'd actually argue it's more valuable to fly outside your airspace. I'm living the dream because I live in New Jersey. I'm the CEO of the company. I founded the company. My company doesn't even cover my home airspace, and it's been that way for 13 years. It just doesn't matter. Okay, I think I'm ready to continue here, Laura.
All right, go ahead. It's all yours.
Thank you. All right, so we are at the San Luis Obispo Airport. I have parked on the southeast ramp. The only thing I'm doing differently is I'm connecting my simulator to the service. So these are real people in front of the scope. This is their job. They get paid to do it, and pilots pay to be here. And that's about all you need to know. Other than that, as long as we treat it as the airplane, it should go okay. So I am, my credentials are there. I'm picking my tail number and what type of plane I'm flying. The system needs to know the ICAO code. So I'm a BE58. I'm in a Baron, and my call sign is 133 Kilo Tango. Let me see if I can make that 132. That's my favorite call sign. Okay.
Number 234 Alpha, say it, type aircraft. Number 234 Alpha flying a Cessna 172.
Okay. Laura, is that audio coming through okay? Just a quick check.
Sounds good, yep.
All right, how's the balance of the radio you just heard in the engine? Is it okay?
Yes, it's good.
Perfect, okay. So we're still connected at the same airport. I'm going to swap to the online map to give us some situational awareness right away. So full disclosure, Pilot Edge is not technically open right now. We open at 8 a.m. Pacific time.
Alpha, runway 29,
and you'll see it's actually 9 minutes before opening time, but for the purposes of the presentation today, we did invite a couple of friends to come and fly and a couple of controllers to come and control. So
number 7 X-ray Zulu, traffic departs prior to arrival. We'll be making left traffic, runway 29, clear touch and go.
Traffic in sight, and we'll make...
So we just said 7 X-ray Zulu is clear touch and go.
7 X-ray Zulu.
There's a guy who's just launching from runway 29, and there's someone who's holding short. So this is a relatively busy airport, 2 on the ground, 2 in the air, and you can hear the controller working those. And there goes that 172 that was just on the roll, 234 Alpha. There he goes into the sunset. That's actually a really nice shot, other than the fact that you can't really see him now. There he goes, coming out the other side. So these are real human beings flying simulators just like this,
holding short
in one shared
environment, ready for departure.
Scout 8607 uniform, San Luis Tower, hold short for landing traffic.
Okay, so let's grab the ATIS.
Runway 29, 8607 uniform.
We could do that through the
EFB.
EFB.
07 uniform, you're saying you're remaining in the pattern?
Use a shortcut and pull it from
affirmative, 07 uniform.
the simulator itself. So ATIS is 20.6, and then ground is 0.6. So 20.6 and ground 0.6. So let me turn off the radio reception for a second. So the audio panel is now alive. When was the last time you cared about your audio panel in a sim? Probably never. So are we going to hear ATC anymore? No, we're not, because I just turned off COM1 receive. So we said 20.6 is the ATIS. I can use both radios. So let's flip my COM2 radio to 20.6, and let's turn on COM2 for receiving.
San Luis County Regional Airport, ATIS Information Victor.
Victor.
1356 Zulu. Wind 300 at 3. Visibility 7. Sky condition, clear. Temperature 13. Dew point 11. Altimeter 299er1. Arriving and departing runway 29er. Visual approaches in use. Read back all runway assignments and hold short instructions. Advise on initial contact. You have information Victor.
Okay, so we got Victor. The controllers know that it's Victor. I know it's Victor. If I check in with the wrong ATIS code, they're going to correct me on it. When a new ATIS comes out, they'll tell us about it. You see that I actually had to set the altimeter there. So we have, this is one of the benefits again of real world weather. We have correlation between what's happening in the real world and what's happening in my simulator. I just had to adjust the simulator to 29901, and when I did that, the altimeter is now accurate within about 40 feet or 30 feet, it looks like, because the field elevation is actually 212. Okay, so we've got Victor. Let's call ground for a lap of the pattern. So we said ground was 120.6. My personal flow is to only use COM2 for listening or for picking up ATIS and monitoring guard. So I'm going to go back to guard on COM2, and I'm going to put ground on my COM1 standby, actually COM1 active. I did have tower in there already, so I don't want to lose that. So let's put tower 124.0. Let's flip that into standby, and let's go to 120. No, did that the wrong way. We'll keep tower in COM1 and 121.6, right? Ground 0.6 was the ground frequency. I'm just doing this with a mouse. You can get dedicated hardware to change the radio frequencies a little bit more efficiently. Okay, ground 0.6, tower's ready to go. We have Victor. Let's call for taxi. And we are on the southeast ramp, it looks like, opposite Alpha. All right, let's give ground a buzz. Of course, if you're going to play with your audio panel, make sure it is right. I was about to transmit in the blind. I would have been transmitting, but I wouldn't have been listening. So, COM1 back on. San Luis ground, Baron 1 tree 2 Kilo Tango information Victor on the southeast ramp, taxi for closed traffic.
All right, 132 Kilo Tango, San Luis ground, good morning, runway 29er, taxi via Alpha.
Runway 29er, taxi via Alpha, Baron 1 tree 2 Kilo Tango. It appears my transmit button also didn't work on my joystick. I had to swap to using the keyboard. So I think I have an actual hardware failure of my joystick, and that some of the buttons are not working as they should be. All right, we will get through it. Okay, so 29er via Alpha. I am rushing this a little bit. I do have pretty good situational awareness at this airport, so I know where Alpha is. I could be using ForeFlight or Garmin Pilot to have a moving map display. Of course, we also have it in the sim itself. So as soon as I'm straight on Alpha here, I'll bring that up. You can see that aircraft on final for runway 29er. So this already starts feeling very, very different to our offline flight, right? We care about where we are. I'm aware of what other people are doing. This is a living, breathing environment. We're not hearing that aircraft because we do have a separate controller working ground versus being on the tower frequency. So once I swap to the tower frequency over there, we would expect to hear the airborne aircraft again. Okay, I am watching the time closely here. I'll probably forego picking up an IFR clearance. And we'll just do a quick lap. You know what? Change of plan. I'm going to make sure that this is actually very, very dynamic.
Back 245, I'm going to clear off 29er. Request taxi back for close traffic.
Okay. here's what we're going to do. We'll show that this isn't a scripted demo.
For 5 Lima Golf, runway 29, taxi via Alpha.
I'm going to ask the taxi out of the way and we'll pick up
29
an
Alpha,
IFR clearance, because we have already seen a lap of the pattern and you've already seen aircraft flying in the environment. So what I'll do instead is see if we can pick up an IFR clearance and let's see what we can copy together. So if anyone who's instrument rated or instrument training wants to get a pen and paper out, let's grab an IFR clearance. But I want to be polite to other people and let ground know. Ground Baron 132 Kilo Tango, change of plan. Rather than depart VFR, we'd like to pick up an IFR clearance to Santa Barbara, just to pop up IFR if we can. We're a BE58 Slant Golf, and I can move out of the way to keep Alpha clear for you.
November 2 Kilo Tango, Roger, clearance on request, stand by.
Thank you. Okay. Controller was not expecting that. I was not expecting that. So again, this is a great example of what would you do in the airplane. Well, obviously you wouldn't do this particular thing. It's a little cruel. But you know, thinking about, okay, we need to get out of the way. We're doing something that is going to delay us at the runway. Is anybody coming? I know there's someone coming. I just heard a guy call for taxi before. He had exited the runway. He said he wanted to taxi back. Well, I don't want to block runway 29. The controller's
Number
going to be
132
unhappy if you
Tango,
block the
advisory
runway.
copy.
Go ahead for Baron 132 Kilo Tango.
Baron 2 Kilo Tango, clear to Santa Barbara Airport, 3B3 departure, Morro Bay transition, direct Gaviota, then direct. Maintain 4,000, expect 5,000, 5 minutes after departure. Departure frequency with Santa Barbara departure on 124.15, squawk 5101.
Baron 2 Kilo Tango, can you just repeat the SID and the transition one more time?
For 132 Kilo Tango, no problem. It's the Creepy 3 departure, and then the Mike Quebec Oscar transition. Actually, stand by.
All right, so I did get it copied down, but it sounds like he's...
Yep, I'm reading that correct to you. It's the Creepy 3 departure and the Morro Bay transition, direct Gaviota. It's called Victor Oscar.
Okay, I think we got Baron 2 Kilo Tango cleared to Santa Barbara, Creep 3 or Creep 3 departure, Morro Bay transition, direct Gaviota, that's Golf Victor Oscar, then direct maintain 4, expect 5 and 5, departures 2415, and squawk 5101.
November 2 Kilo Tango, read back correct.
Baron 2 Kilo Tango. Okay, there we go. Laura, miraculously, we have done it. It is the top of the hour, and we have managed to complete the 2 demos and a very rushed presentation. I wanted more time for the Q&A, but I'm willing to stay for the Q&A for the 10-minute overflow if that works for you. But otherwise, I think that concludes the demo here. Hopefully people understand we started with the offline demo, we moved to an online demo. We have already seen pattern work, we've seen my terrible landing, we've seen that my joystick is having a problem right now, and we changed the plan and called for taxi VFR, moved to the side, stay out of the way, and picked up an IFR clearance.